Today's a great day as we are in Paris with Franck Touzeau, the worldwide watch director of Piaget. And Haute Time today, I had the luxury of being in Switzerland and touring both factories that are very, very important to the Piaget brand. So Frank, tell us a little about the brand. We were introduced to the history of the brand, but you have some very exciting developments, specifically with the skeleton thin watch. Tell us a little about some of the good things or exciting things that are going on in the Piaget factory in Switzerland.
You know, at the end of the 19th century, the brand was specialized in the development of movements for the other brands, and until 1943, the brand was a great supplier for all the brands. And at the beginning of the 40s, the brand started to work on its own collection. And the beginning of the story of the brand developing watches under its own brand name was really interesting, because we were fully dedicated to ultra-thin movement only. And the way to develop ultra-thin movements liberates all the creativity for the brand to develop the cases. And in 1957, the brand launched a movement which was called the 9P, which was one of the thinnest ultra-thin movements all over the world. And only 3 years later, in 1960, the brand launched the 12P, which was the thinnest automatic movement in the watchmaking industry. And 2 years ago, in 1910, we celebrated the 50th anniversary of the 12P by launching a new automatic movement with a double record watch. The thinnest movement, the thinnest automatic one, measuring only 2.35 millimeters thick, and of course the thinnest automatic watch measuring 5.25 millimeters.
How important do you think that was in the watch industry? Because as you know, about 5, 6, 7 years ago, everything was about big watches, diamonds, and all these brands were coming out with these really oversized watches, 44 inches, 46, 46. And now, in the last 2 to 3 years, thin has become important. And what's exciting is Piaget's, the inventor. That when you think of thin watches, you always think of Piaget. So how important do you think it was, not to the brand, but also to the industry, for Piaget to come up with something that takes the thin watch to the next level?
But the main philosophy of the brand is to develop elegant watches, ultra-thin watches, because when you wear an ultra-thin watch, it's always elegant, and at the end it makes a difference, because when when the other brands develop big watches, at the end it's not suitable, and there are a lot of concept movements inside which are really interesting, but Piaget, when we try to think about the development of a movement, we always want to develop ultra-thin movements in order to be sure that we will be able to develop a very nice and elegant watch. But Piaget has also developed important watches like the perpetual calendar, like this one. The case measures 46.5 millimeters for the diameter of the watch, but we've got inside a perpetual calendar which is ultra-thin.
And tell us a little about the movement. Tell us a little about the movement, as you have a couple of different parts of the watch. Tell us a little about the factors of the watch, because this is one of my favorite watches that Piaget has made.
But the watch is really interesting because the case combines two shapes: a round case with a cushion shape dial opening, and this is the philosophy of all the watches of the Black Tie collection. And the movement is inside. We developed on it during 2.5 years in order to be sure to develop ultra-thin components to ensure the thinness of the movements at the end. And the movement is really interesting because you can see everything on your dial: the date, the month, the leap year, and you've got also a dual time zone which is positioned at 7 o'clock in order to give the opportunity to the owner of the watch to take an advantage and to follow the 2 time zone when it travels.
And what's the price point of that piece?
In Swiss francs, it's around 90,000 Swiss francs.
And then you also, which is, we featured it in Haute Living, you have a rose gold edition too, correct?
Yeah.
And what's the price point of that?
And the price point for the plain gold edition is just 88,000 Swiss francs.
As I started the conversation out, Haute Living had the opportunity to visit the original factory of Piaget, and one of the, in my opinion, most impressive parts of the factory was the longevity of your workers, also the turnover. You know, when I was speaking with Yves, who's in charge of the tours, he was explaining that you have maybe a turnover of 1 to 3 employees per year, and the average factory worker that make the watches have been with the company for over 10 to 20 years. He was with the company since the 1960s. How important do you think that is for the brand? Because obviously when you think of the brand, you think of jewelry, but how important is it for people to understand the amount of investment and personnel that it takes into making these watches?
But you know, in that watch, we've got a lot of collaborators working on it, because we've got 2 arts. We've got La Côte which is specialized for the development of all the Piaget movements, and we've got the Plan Les Watt site, where we develop all the cases, all the straps, all the gold bracelets, but also all the jewelry products, and a lot of people work on a watch today.